I hadn't actually checked up on the Stop Cop City groups for a while because I've been doing other things. So I don't really know what the status is. I know that they were doing a people's injunction and they were still complaining about the council trying to get out of doing the whole referendum. But with this car guy, so I've been making some more revelations and insights about the right to petition protection and so forth, about the whole petitioning process from the origins and history of it, including modern law and how it actually is meant to be, and really how it is legislated now, because it's still meant to be operating under the statute. So, and on all of the legislation has got to be compatible and comply with it, and if it doesn't, then it's unlawful. So that's the thing is, with these RICO charges that Chris Carr is bringing, or meant to be bringing, for racketeering, so he can't do it. And the reason is that racketeering is kind of like more like in the Peaky Blinders film. It's to do with business and enterprise or gangs, and it's to do with doing things against people's will. Because the thing with racketeering is that you either lie or be fraudulent about something, and you do something against someone's will, like, blackmail or kidnapping or threats and stuff like that, right? Now, the difference between racketeering and in business and any commercial thing, whether it's fraudulent or honest, and crime is crime, harassment's harassment, threat's a threat, and so forth. As soon as you go into the political actions, the thing is, you're actually doing a legal proceeding, and racketeering ain't no legal proceeding, is not a legal proceeding. Racketeering is a business thing, whether done fraudulently or honestly, and whether done criminally with force. And the difference between political is that it's a political. You bring in a legal case. Now, if you wanted to say racketeering charges for bringing a legal case, well, that would be like what we're saying that the police are doing racketeering, or lawyers, blackmailing you or using fraud, or lawyers and judges, using threats or making you comply and sign things, which is actually the case. What we've got with on the Richard Verb's channel, they're talking about these mass magistrates putting through hundreds and thousands of fines and stuff, and through the council as well, when if everyone turned up, because you're allowed to turn up, they wouldn't actually be able to give everyone the allotted time to represent, because the way they're doing it is unlawful. Because if everyone turned up who had the right to turn up, they wouldn't actually be able to fit anyone in to speak or reply in terms of what they were processing, and it wouldn't give you your legal due process. So they're doing like mass processing of charges and fines and so forth. I could link you the video, but it's one of the ones on the Rob's channel. It's the one with there's a picture of a guy with like a big yellow badge on his shirt, quite a big guy with a baldish head. Ironically, he popped up on that programme after I'd done that Stop Cop City song with the Men at Work picture with the police badge on the Men at Work character. So, now with Chris Carr and these protesters, these Stop Cop City protesters, the thing is that they're trying to prosecute them for the funds and the money, right? Well, the thing is, anytime you get any money for anything, you're allowed to put it into a non-profit or give it to a non-profit. If you're doing a business and selling something, right, you can give as much money as you want to a non-profit. And the thing is, the only thing is that if you've got a non-profit but you give it to business, I think what Carr's trying to say is that they were pretending they were doing it for a charity but using it for themselves. But are they using it for travelling around? For a non-profit political campaign, you need to travel and you need to eat as well. If it was for food or for travel or for even clothing, when they're going about their petitioning, you can't really say that that's racketeering, because if you're a police officer, you can claim for a uniform, you can claim tax and expenses for uniforms and your shoes, and even possibly maybe even for you might be able to, if you didn't have any money, you got to eat or you can't work. Under the government, police uniforms and so forth. I mean, look at school. Some schools give school dinners, other schools don't. Now, if they were claiming that they were, taking money for charities and then using it for, completely just their own complete and total lifestyle, but while you're supporting your living to enable you to do the political campaign, then you're not really using the money for something else, because, where's your base? Where you're working from? Home? If you're going out every day collecting petition signatures and making signs and banners, and where you're based from, where you're working from, you don't have a business when you're doing a political action, you don't have a business base unless you're a registered political party. Now, you only need to be a registered political party if you have a certain massive amounts of turnover a year, huge amounts of turnover a year. Like, I think it's saying now it's not even £5,000 a year in $5,000 a year in receipts. It said on IRS, it says if it's under $5,000 receipts a year, you don't even have to file it to the government or let them know what you're doing, or even tell them that you're even doing a political campaign and running it through. But I read another thing, that if it's under 25,000, you definitely don't have to register as an official democratic organisation, as a charity, or as a political party, because it's not permanent, it's not long term, it's not a big enterprise, it's only a small thing. So, and if it isn't a big enterprise, if it isn't a political party, if you haven't got headquarters, then you're just operating it from home. So if you need some sort of base to operate from somewhere, so to live, to be alive, it's almost like in Magna Carta when they're saying, they can't take your wood away from you or your car, for fines. You need to be able to operate. It's almost like, if you refuse selling pens to police officers, they can't write down statements, If you don't have a base to operate from, a house or home, you can't make political banners and go out and do political actions and then come home and go to sleep, So that's the thing with CAR. Now, also, another thing is this, right? So because it's a small endeavour stopcock city, right? I severely doubt that you can say that they're swindling any money, because it first of all, very few of them are running receipts through for their projects at $5,000 a year, and then even less of them than that are qualifying for the 15,000 or 25,000, whatever it is, for to need to even register to have an official political party or campaign. It's small, so as long as they're doing some political work, Now, the other thing is this, right? When it comes to this whole blackmail, racketeering, I severely doubt any of these citizens are forcing people to sign the petitions, like saying, sign or I'll nut you, or, threatening blackmail or something like that. You can't really have blackmail with petitioning, because the signs and banners are a complaint and grievance against something. So it's almost like an attack or an opposition. The banners are saying, whatever. You can't really have blackmail, because the nature of it is a complaint. It is a grievance. But when it comes down to the protection and the immunity, that's an important thing. Right, now, let's first, the Professor Karen Bowie Glasgow University paper, it gives evidence, compelling evidence from a professor, which cannot really be denied, that petitioning is a legal proceedings. You bring in legal proceedings, and it's not criminal or civil proceedings, it's it's criminal, not civil or criminal proceedings, it's legal proceedings. It is a legal proceedings. It's not a written formal request. It's a legal proceeding. Official legal action process that you're engaged in, right? And the one book that I haven't read yet is the book that's got the most in it, but I haven't actually read all the Edward Fitzgerald book yet, even though I've got myself a copy of it for the petition campaign. And I've sent a couple of copies to Parliament as well, and to the Royal Courts of Justice. But, so, look, with the statutes, though, right, you got to understand these statutes. So, the thing is, right, with the statute laws, which is what it's all based on and what it is, right, so your petition of right in the 1620s, there isn't really much evidence from the 1500s because she hasn't got any in her paper, Karen Bowie. But the petition of right, so the 1620s, I think that is before the Civil War. I think the Civil War was through the 1640s and 50s. But so this petition of right, so the petition of right, You've got a lot of mariners and sort of characters going around the country, sailors and so forth, who are kind of being a bit sort of rogue characters that the people are complaining about. We've also got this government wanting to take the shipping tax from people. Now, you've got these people, you've got Parliament, but it's not permanent, right? So coming out of the 14 and 1500s, you just had the King and the Privy Council, right? That you would, complain to or petition or bring cases to. You had your judge circuits and so forth, but you've got mainly the people doing the policing and so forth, and you've only really got the sheriffs and constables appointed in certain places. You don't actually have a full-on police force. Now, the thing is, in the early 1620s, you've got this petition of right, and it says that there are certain immunities that they recognise, that people are claiming certain immunities, right? But the main thing about that act is that it sets out the main judicial process, which is that you can only really... It's only fair, this is following on really from Magna Carta, which is before. Because barons and lords can only be judged by their equals, which is their peers, so that they're judged in law by the other barons and lords, right? And maybe that comes from the Druids, maybe the thought that, when you see, you weren't judged by a jury in the Celtic model, you were judged by the Druids, who were meant to be altruistic people or people with good judgment, right? And were you trusted to judge? And not necessarily, the laws were made up by the clan leaders, though, the different clan leaders, and different clans had different laws, right? And the people actually voted for who was in charge of the clans, so there was some voting going on. Now, but the thing is, after the Romans and after, Alfred and so forth, Anglo-Saxons and so forth, because the Lord of the Land, made judgments and so forth through the Anglo-Saxon period and Danelaw and so forth. When you get to, the lords could make judgments, not just the king. So when you get to this 1620s, anyway, you've got this legal process, this lawful process. You've got to be put through due process, a fair process, right? And it says in this due and fair process, it's either by the lawful judgment of your peers. Now, the lawful judgment of your peers is by legal, lawful, due process, fair process, which means that, you've got to hear the facts, you've got to hear what happens, you've got to hear witnesses, the people have their say and things, you're doing investigations, and this is why you have a whole court, so people can, make everything heard, a hearing, right? So, a lawful judgment of your peers is because, it was a lawful process. You got everyone's opinion. You set the evidence out. You writ the evidence down, and then, or the rule of law. Now, if you're not going to be judged by your peers, but by the rule of law, then, it's purely the legislative writ, and the judge. But the thing is, the judge basically advise people on the law, but the jury can make a decision anyway. Now, I am suggesting that the petition of right is basically confirming what really happened in the situation with Ian Bray in the Extinction Rebellion case at Southwark Crown Court. The jury decided to ignore the law and go purely in their opinion, but it was a lawful process. What it was a jury deciding not to agree with the rule of law, but by their own opinion, but it was a lawful judgment of the peers. Why was it lawful judgment of their peers if they ignored the legislative law? Because they were in a court, because they were the selected jury, because they had witnesses, because they'd all given evidence, and because it had been heard. The trial, that's a lawful process, right? So according to that, the peers, and obviously the barons and lords are judged by their peers, and the common people are judged by their peers, which is your jury. So it was a lawful due process, but it didn't decide to go with what the law said, right? Now, with that in mind, right, if you kind of go forward a bit to the Tumultuous Act in 1661. Now, what had happened by then, by the Tumultuous Act, is that after the Petition of Right, we have the Civil War. If I'm not wrong, I think the Civil War was 1640s and 50s. It basically something to do with this, shipping tax or whatever. No one wanted to pay money, and then you've got Oliver Cromwell, and you have the Civil War. And the Civil War is the country's in turmoil. There's places getting raided by soldiers of either side. Paintings taken. What happens really is the soldiers and the aristocracy really fleece everyone, and I think that's because no one wanted to pay the shipping tax. I think it was a bit of a plan. Well, a bit of a kind of agreed on, nodded on war, a bit more like a dueling with pistols. Okay, we'll both walk at 50 paces and turn on each other and fire, and then no one's responsible. This whole Cromwell, I do think Cromwell wanted to remove the royals, but I think it was more kind of like a parliamentary, kind of like a bit of a bow and curtsy, a bit of a duel, between Oxford and London, Parliament and Oxford. They had the respective headquarters. But a lot of the country got robbed from soldiers and so forth, even though, there was a tiff. No doubt, the king did get deposed and removed, but on all these different judges and jurisdictions and juries and courts were all differences between opinion. So after the Civil War, when the king gets back in, he really doesn't like this whole petitioning thing and the liberals and so forth anyway. And they have this Tumultuous Petitioning Act, which is that, if you're having over 20 people or whatever presenting petitions, then it's got to go to a grand jury or a judge or like magistrates, right? Well, because it's a legal process and so forth. But if you get 20 signatures, it's, the support of people with evidence, and it's a legal case to the king. But when you get more than 20 people, you're starting to accumulate, it's starting to get a lot of people to sort out. But you would have thought the more people you have signing it and supporting it, then it's more of a case. It's a stronger case. Obviously, if you get loads of people signing it, then surely it would override the authority. Well, the thing is, what I think is that with that Tumultuous Act, when you're getting your 20 signatures or more, that's definitely you've got a legal case, and you've got evidence, you've got statements, and you've definitely confirmed that you are bringing due process, because you haven't just you're not like thieves doing a business. I'll kind of tie this into the RICO charges and Chris Carr, right? So you're definitely not doing a business enterprise. You're doing a legal process. That's what you're doing. And, if you're getting evidence and statements, you can't con anyone because that's their evidence and testimony, and it's to be judged whether it's right or wrong or not. But you're bringing a case, and it's due process, right? And there's a request that you've got. So you've got the public support. So it's lawful, it's lawful legal due process. That's the thing. Now, so therefore, if you're bringing a lawful due legal process and you've got a hell of a lot of people supporting it and evidence, it's almost like the police, who's to say that the police is investigating a crime legitimately and the police officer is not making it up and the police officer really is following the line of duty and the police officer really is investigating a crime and he really is, arresting you for evidence and seizing things for evidence and so forth. Who's to say that? Well, the thing is, they didn't even have a police force even back in the day. You had to go to the sheriff with it. The public did to say, whatever, hue and cry. Now, when you've got so many people who are putting their hand to the letter or their evidence to the statement and they're bringing the proceeding, you've got yourself a legal suit and you've got your immunity like a police officer because you're officially doing it. That's where the illegal, protection comes in from prosecution. Now, the fact, though, that if it was over 20 signatures that had to be checked by a grand jury or the magistrates, okay, you're definitely bringing a legal process and you're definitely doing that. We can't deny that. But what are you asking for? Let's get it all checked through. So the tumultuous actors wanting it to be checked by a larger part of a grand jury. So you've got your people, so the people are bringing it to the people. So that the people are bringing it to the people to be checked by their peers, the larger part of a grand jury. Well, there's a hell of a lot of people here officially bringing a case, so let's have a look what they're asking for. Or your judges, magistrates, now if it's going to the local area, it can be dealt with in the local area, like petitioning the council in that tumultuous act. But if it's going to Parliament or the Palace of Westminster, your magistrates of London, right? And Parliament or the King Privy Council and so forth to be looked at. They had the Lord of the Articles, and so forth. They were trying to charge people money for it and stuff, but they put a stop to all that because it's due process that we're paying for. It was tax money, So that's what's happening in the tumultuous act. So you've got your immunity because you've got a large number of people who are bringing, the fact that they're writing evidence down and they're asking for making an official request and it's supported by the public. That is enough, to officially, it's almost like a police officer, he's chasing someone in a police car to say that he's doing anything, what even legal process exists? Well, the right to petition exists. His Pompous Act exists. His Road Traffic Act exists. So that gets you the immunity, but it's got to be checked through. Now, 20 years, you see, then, we have this glorious revolution. They're not too happy with Charles. So they want more of a liberal thing. And then we have this, the 1688 Bill of Rights, which makes all prosecutions officially totally illegal and you can't be imprisoned, officially, reitted, and all these commitments, really, which is things like, being charged monies and all other things like that, really like... But that tumultuous act wasn't abolished until 1986. Some of it was still in place. There is some contradictions with the fact that, you can't be able to win any commitments, but you can't be prosecuted. What are the commitments of the tumultuous act? Well, we get it checked through. But if it's to the king, it's not going to the local area, or to Westminster. But you can't be prosecuted. Why? Because you're bringing an official... It's official. You're doing it officially, like a police officer doing an official investigation. You're bringing an official legal proceeding, like a civil case, and you're getting your evidence, and you are engaged, and the public have signed it and supported it, and that is the same of your peers saying, yeah, okay, we agree with this. You don't care what the law is. It's officially like a jury saying with Ian Bray, okay, we support this campaign. We don't care what the law says. So you've got your lawful judgment of you. Why is it lawful? Because that's the law. It says that that's your right, and you're doing the due process. You're getting the signatures. You've written it down. You've put it in writing. And what's the difference between racketeering and RICO charges? Is that the Peaky Blinders. If they're running an illegal racket, they're not writing it down in paper and telling the government that we're cheating or we're lying. What Carr's trying to say is that they're not telling the truth about what they're doing, but I think they were. They're collecting signatures on Stop Cop Say petition. They're doing signs and banners and promoting it. Now, whether they're collecting money And whether some of that money is used for their shoes, or whether it's used for their police uniform, or whether it's used for their house, if they haven't, it's not big enough to have an official registered political party or headquarters, you can do it from home. So, they are using it in a way you can sort of like decide how you're going to distribute it, really, I suppose, in a way, because it's still a small endeavour. And if there's people, they're not forcing the people to sign it, they don't have to sign it, they're asking them. It's backed by a section of the public. So you get your immunity and protection. You can't prosecute them for racketeering. You can't do it because it's not blackmail or, it's not a business. Once it's political and a certain amount of the people support it, and the judgment comes in from so you've got your protection for what you're doing. You've got the protection on yourselves and what you're going about doing. The thing that you're asking for, like in the tumultuous act through the larger part of the grand jury or three justices or London magistrates or whatever, that's a decision on the matter you're bringing, not on yourselves, not on whether you're protected because you've got your signatures from the public is your consent, your peer consent, regardless of rule of law. That's where it is. And the larger part of the grand jury or the justices part of that legal process is, all about decisions on the matter you are bringing for judgment, not yourselves, right? So that's that. And then when the 1688 bill, you definitely can't prosecute or imprisoned, and there's a Scottish one as well, petition of right, the Scottish, the 1689 bill, which is I'm trying to think the words of the petition of right. It's basically it's like the same words but in a different order basically. But it's similar to the 1688 bill. It says you can't be imprisoned. So, and you're doing service to the public because half the public have signed it. So you can't do you shouldn't be giving community service because you are serving the public because they've supported it. And the thing is that when it comes to fines, you can't really be charged. A lot of this is meant to be facilitated out of taxpayer money, and the public are giving to it charitably anyway. And, when it comes to if there's any damage of stuff or anything, we have insurance nowadays. So, for damages, things are insured, although if it's priceless or irreplaceable, I mean, that is tragic. But so far with Extinction Rebellion in the modern world, a lot of things are replaceable. In fact, the way Keir Starmer's going and Rishi Sunak, they're wanting to replace things faster and faster and faster, that you can't get newer windows, it's like a plastic PVC conservatory. I mean, is that criminal damage? Is that racketeering, trying to persuade people to get PVC conservatories and get rid of their traditional, priceless, irreplaceable, unique, one-of-a-kind cottages? Was that criminal? It destroyed all the heritage and made them replace it by plastic PVC conservatories, Tory conservatories. There's nothing less that's irreplaceable because, all you need is, that guy, that guy, what's that guy in the advert? That guy with the, he dresses like a judge. He dresses like a magistrate or a judge. He's almost like Peter Kay. Like Peter Kay on the Warburton advert. Here he is, Mr. Bread. Safe Style windows. Safe Style. I'll have to have a look for that on YouTube. Safe Style windows. He's kind of this nutter from Manchester, and he wears like a judge costume for a joke, but he's like Peter Kay. It's called Safe Style windows. Well, the thing with a window is when you've replaced everything with modern PVC windows, they're all replaceable because they're all the same. It's not like an antique or a rare replaceable. It's, if everyone's got Tory conservatories and they all get smashed, then you pay off the insurance and they all get, they can't get a new conservatory quicker. I mean, now they're updating your mobile phones quicker than you smash your screen, So that joke on Safe Star Windows and the fact he dresses like a magistrate, I kind of get that now. I think that was planted. I don't think that he was on the ball with that. I think I think someone fleeced him with it. I think someone who knew that what they were talking about kind of planted it. It's a plant. It's almost like a political plant, that. Because really, when I question Boris Johnson and all the Tories, why did they dupe everyone into, getting rid of their vintage, irreplaceable, priceless windows, which could be antiques, and chucking them? That was done by television adverts, coercion. I mean, why don't you do them for RICO charges, racketeering, lying? Oh, these would be better off with these windows, or whatever. So when it comes to the Gail Bradbrook case, that is highly relevant for this Department of Transport window that got smashed. And that case was the other week, and I submitted a statement on that. To the court officially. So, that Safe Star Windows, never mind, what damage there is, it's insured, and, we are serving the community, we're bringing a case. So, really, the whole judicial part of it is on the judgment of the grievance and matter that you're bringing to ask for judgment on. And this is meant currently debate in Parliament or by local council. But the thing is, when you're getting so many, this whole, over 20 signatures on the Tumultuous Act, they've got the fact that you don't even, look, the model for that petition of the right, you've got your legal due process, and it can be judged by the judges by rule of law or purely by the peers, what the peers think. This is when you're getting onto the model for, like, the Inquiries Act and so forth, by evidence or by what the people think, judgment of the people, but through lawful process where all facts are heard, and on statements are given. It's effectively, the fact of it, the truth and fact of it effectively is that, like, when it comes to petitions for the council, you're bringing a legal proceeding, you're bringing a legal action, and what you're doing is, when you get a large amount of signatures, a very, very large amount, which this says, equal to something like 5% of the electorate, you're entitled to these referendums, which is overriding the council. Because it goes to the people, the referendum. So what is that? Well, effectively, you're looking at, in law, legally, and this is all supported through all these acts. This is what they are. This is what it is. It is like the Imbray jury. It's like the Imbray jury, and that's what you're doing basically when you are petitioning the local council. If you get so much of a weight of signatures from your peers, an opinion, it overrides the rule of law, which basically overrides the council's judgment, the council's opinion, the council's hammer, and whatever, these are the rule, for building a highway or planning permission, you can only complain on this fact or that fact, you can only complain on this clause, or you've got to have evidence to show that, the trees are in need of repair, or the animals, the bats are under threat, or the highway, there's a large volume of traffic or whatever to justify it. But once you, that's by rule of law or by the judgment of the judge. But when it's the peers, the jury, you're overriding that, because this is your referendum, and that's like in the court with your jury overriding it. But that's what you're doing when you bring petition, particularly when you get huge amounts. Even the council is saying, we only hear objections, you can only object on this clause or that clause, or you can only object on this or that. Well, no, you can actually object on the fact that we just don't want it. But because it's still in lawful judgment of the peers, well, that's the due process. You go into the council chamber, you present a petition. If it's got over 5% of the electorate, we don't care what the councillors think or what the what the particulars are that you can or can't use in the complaint to the council, because you're overriding it purely on, we don't want it, So that's the basis of it. So you have got immunity really in protection from prosecution. Everything's sort of meant to be insured. You are doing good work for the community because the community are asking you to do it and signing it and supporting it. And you're asking a judgment on it. And at the end of the day, if it gets so big, so much support behind it, it actually even the public actually have got themselves a vote higher than a petition, which is overriding the elected councillors. Because what you're doing is the councillors are only elected on so many votes anyway, and if you're collecting more votes than what they got elected with, then that's it. And this is what Starmer and the Tories really don't like, because they've gone out of their way to get elected, and you're getting their sheep. It's like they've got their shepherds with their flock for their party. They got them elected, and they're the ones making the decisions. But when you get a certain amount of votes in elections, right? Voters say you're overriding the power, the authority of what they were elected with. You've exceeded that, and that's when it comes to referendums and public vote. So that's what the whole thing is. So I severely doubt that those Stop Cop City people in America, I severely doubt that they were doing, really, really sinister racketeering, like the sort of thing, on Peaky Blinders, criminal gangs, because it's not that, it's a short-term petition. It's not a permanent political party, and it's not a, registered organisation. And everyone who's doing it is kind of volunteering themselves. It doesn't really have a central organisation with one central funds, like, this is the Stop. It's not like, the Labour Party or the Tories. They're not a registered party. And a small endeavour that's, if each of the people themselves who are doing it, like voluntary, sort of like... it's a diffused petition where everyone's chipping in. So they're all doing their own bit. So each person doing their own voluntary contribution themselves, kind of in a way, is really probably not exceeding that $5,000 receipts on IRS under 5013C3. And they're definitely not up to $15,000 or $25,000. So they don't have to officially register with the government. So really... if they're working from the home base and they need to clothe themselves, or you can't walk on and get signatures, Chris Carr can't tell them what they shouldn't be using the money for. As long as they're collecting signatures, as long as they are making some banners, they don't have to file the receipts with that government. So until they exceed $5,000 a year, they don't have to tell Carr they don't have to disclose to Carr how much they're using on what, as long as they can show evidence that they are doing what they say they're doing. Like is a banner wave. If they wave a Cop City banner in front of them, and they're collecting signatures, or spreading the word of it, even if they're walking on the streets like some sort of religious fanatic going, "Stop Cop City, stop Cop City," they've got to clothe themselves and they've got to go home and go to sleep and keep warm. And then when they get out of bed and then walk around the town, even if they're a town crier, going to stop walking around all day shouting, "Stop Cop City, stop Cop City," if they're shouting that, and then, they need some food. So Carr, I don't think Carr, maybe he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's ironic that he's called Carr, isn't it? I mean, where do they pull these people from? It's almost like, where do they pull that Safe Star Windows guy from with the magistrate costume? Anyway, that's where I am with it now. So, I mean, I'll put this to Met Police Chief, really, and to, probably Judicial Office of Investigations, because this is, from what I've read in the statutes, right, I know it's quite a crude, it's a long conversation, because I've been talking 39 minutes, but this is, if you understand what I'm saying, what I want you to understand is the basis, the principle that I'm setting out. and the reasons why. So if you check that through the legislation, the origins, check all of the Gerald Edward Fitzgerald book, the Professor Karen Bowie paper, the Petition of Right and so forth, and then the gradual enacting of the modern laws and so forth, which all have to accommodate for those statutes because they're still in effect, the ones that are still in effect. What is this? What even is this? You see, when you get a car, like, this is, Christopher M. Car. When you get a car, what is this? Well, it's a little bit like a cart. It's not a cart, but it's a vehicle. What is this? What is this car? It's a cart, but you sit on it, but it doesn't have horses pulling it, right? But it's there to get you from A to B. There's lots of modern legislation with cars, like, seat belts, lots of legislation that the cars have got to comply with, but it's still got four wheels on it and a chassis and something to steer it, what it is. And this is the thing with the petition. On the council websites, they're just trying to say that a petition is a formal request, of something you want doing. No, that actually is almost like, saying a car's not a car. A petition is not a formal request. A petition is a legal proceeding, a judicial legal proceeding, like a jury and judges and police collecting witness statements and so forth. It's a very serious legal process. When you're facing the World Health Organization taking away your rights or attempting to override our rights and saying we don't have any rights anymore, I would say that the seriousness of that legal process is more serious than someone stealing a loaf of bread or even stealing one car, because the whole rights of the nation being overridden by the World Health Organization, that's a serious badass case that you're bringing to the government, with whatever evidence you need and how many people you've got signing it, over 130,000, like Tess Lowry. So, the seriousness of one police officer saying, I can drive as fast as I want down a road to recover this vehicle, and it's going to legal due process, with lawful process, in front of a jury and a magistrate, he collected some fingerprints and whatever, a scarf. We're looking at the World Health Organization are attempting to take away everyone's rights of all of England. And we're bringing a legal, lawful due process by the petition of Tess Lowry. Now, she's got a very heavy weight of people signed up to it, over 140,000. But she could go further than that and get 3 million. And then we would have a referendum on it, which is your peers voting on it. And you could have some serious evidence to that over the World Health Organization, like, can they even do that? Like the 1700 Act of Settlement says that they can't. The MPs can't stand by and let them do that. Now, are these MPs doing it illegally and lawfully? Can we gather evidence on them? Like the Inquiries Act, can we have an inquiry? And before it's an official public inquiry, can we have a smaller inquiry, but still by legal, lawful due process of petition? Should it appear be presented to the local minister? You got yourself a little investigation by lawful due process. You're getting people to sign it and you're getting evidence. And you can't be prosecuted for that. So it is all by lawful legal due process. And you can do policing, really. It's a legal case. These petition cases contain the full spectrum of what's available, whether it's, the thing is, for a civil case and divorce, you can have an investigation because you can, there's evidence that is needed for legal proceedings. And you can even civil cases can identify crimes and send them for orders being made, criminal orders, in believe it or not, in civil cases, if the matter arises. They don't really do it these days, but it says that it can. there's certain investigation work which needs to be done in a civil case. Like, mostly they get subpoenas compelling the other party to give over because they won't give it. But what can and can't you do? Well, police need warrants to do search, but you don't need a warrant if your football is in someone's garden. You don't need to go for a judge to get a warrant to get your football back. So this is now where you're getting on with the police in their trespassing charges, right? If your football blows into a garden, there's enough accommodation in the legislation for you to go and get that ball because it's your property to retrieve it, right? You're not trespassing. If the landowner comes out and tells you to get off his land, whatever, you comply with him, but you go and get your ball, right? If he don't give you it, that's theft. So if you're gathering evidence, this is where the newspapers are really spying on everyone because the newspapers think they can tap everyone's phone and put cameras everywhere. It's the right freedom of the press. The freedom of the press actually is the right to publish in the press and use the press to publish witness statements and get petitions. The press, anything that the press is doing in spying and listening in and getting evidence is not the freedom of press. That's their right to petition as citizens if they think they're bringing a case or the public have the right to know. But unless they're bringing a legal case, really, they're not bringing it by official proper due process because they're not declaring it. They're bringing a case. They're not bringing it they're just telling a story, telling a tale, The freedom of the press has been completely misconstrued, really. I think a lot of the political parties now are racketeering because they're trying to bully people into Tory or Labour or Democrat or Republican, and they are using their corporate buddies and pals to use influential advertising to persuade the public either way, and they are doing a hell of a lot of things to take away rights and so forth. I think that if Chris Carr can bring RICO charges on these protesters for a very, very small endeavour, then there's a really badass, serious racketeering against the whole government, treason. It's not even racketeering anymore. It becomes big political parties that are registered and have over, £25,000 a year donations or $15,000 a year or dollars. They've got to file all the receipts and so forth. And they might be, hacking emails or like what Al Jazeera's investigated, and so forth, and cheating in the chamber, and magistrates' courts cheating you out of due legal process, and, the council's putting illegal bus markings down and issuing fines. That's fraud, and that is racketeering itself. So that's quite serious, this is really what Atlanta Council are doing, Atlanta City Council. They're trying to bring lawsuits and hold them to commitments in their petitioning when Congress can't make any law that applies to the states. But yet they made up a lot of laws. But could they even have made those laws? This is where we are with the whole thing, from ULEZ to Stop Cop City to saving the trees to the whole thing, because they're trying to undermine what the legal process is through their own authority. And we are engaged in official due process and protected, right? And if we don't get the outcome we want from them, we can collect more weight of evidence and override that with the peers, just for the fact that they don't want these people doing what they're claiming that they're going to do to us, all these building of, all these mass industrial areas and factories next to people, what they don't want, mainly because it's money and lawyers and putting it on the table of the council. You've got to have funding. They're not recognising the will of the people. I think in these local areas, there's enough objections, to object anyway, to to necessitate, not really needing a reason. You do. It can be by what the people think, or by what the council, or on the rule of law. But if one person submits one complaint and indicates certain facts where the council cannot do it or shouldn't do it, then you don't need really more people to sign it. Because if you've given compelling evidence that squirrels are going to be harmed, then the council shouldn't be doing it. If squirrels or bat species or whatever are going to be harmed, that is if the law says that it has to comply with this or that, then you're going on the rule of law by one case. But then if it doesn't really, if you just, even if it's not harming any bats, we just don't want the council to approve it, then you just go and get loads and loads of signatures from the public to say, right, well, by the opinion of the public or the rule of law. Now, when one person puts an application in, if he sells 5 houses to 5 people, that's only houses for 5 people. And even if they sign a petition, those 5 people, what happens if 100 people in the village think it's going to ruin their village? You can't have 5 people. A guy's making if he's making £100,000 or £500,000 or £1 million out of building 5 houses, I'm all right, Jack. He's a man with the money, but money doesn't buy it because, firstly, if one person objects and says that you can't build it there because it'll harm a species and the law says that species is protected, then that legal statement compels the council that they can't do it. But even if there is no legal argument for protecting bat species, if a guy just happens to have a load of money and he's supplying houses for 5 people, but 100 people in the village are going to be affected, then, and they sign it, well, there's no way that, you have an entire village written off for 5 people. When someone, he can build it somewhere else. If he's got the money to build it, then he can find another plot to build it on. The plot thickens. It's like the gunpowder plot, This is where I am with the whole thing, really. And the thing with Johnson and Starmer, they are managing to get by on this principle themselves, which is that, when Boris Johnson goes to Oxford and, David Cameron, and they're doing all these juvenile criminal acts, and when they're boisterous Oxford graduates and, they don't get prosecuted, they're learning the peer powers. They're being protected by their peers. They learn the immunity of the Tories, that they're above the law if they can persuade their peers not to prosecute them. And once they're in control and directing the police force and the police choose not to prosecute them, they've effectively got themselves a political party, the police, and the justices, the old CPS. And if the CPS aren't going to prosecute themselves and the police aren't going to prosecute themselves and they're only going to prosecute the protesters, well, when the protesters start getting more and more signatures, then they've got themselves a political party and they're policing the law as much as the police are, because after all, the public have got the right to police the law themselves and use the law. So what the Met Police Chief is looking at, a force is forming, an opposing force. Forces are coming together. Now it's up to Starmer and Sunak to try and persuade the forces to be on their force, may the force be with them. So, when it's legal due process, when you have a case and when you are writing statements and you are telling people what you are doing, you're not concealing it, you're not blackmailing people in the sense that, you're threatening people or extorting money, whatever. Violence, standing armies, as long as in the petition you're getting the willful signatures of the people, then you can do it. And this is really what Google and Facebook are doing, and Musk and Bill Gates. What they're doing is they're using these apps, they're using these platforms, and they're getting everyone to subscribe to them and saying, accept, consent, submit. Accept, consent, submit. You will not bring a lawsuit against me. You will not bring legal action because you agreed to it. We're all complying with it, and now they're taking all our videos down when they actually legally can't do it, because the freedom of press is, if they form a press or a newspaper or a publishing facility in this country, it has to allow people to do political actions, or they're breaking the law. You know, if you're making pens, you have to give pens to the police, right? Or the police can't write statements. But then again, if you're bringing a petition case, you have to sell pens not only to the police, but to the people who are doing the petition, right? Unless you manage to get, you know, every single, you know, well, it's actually illegal and a crime. The rules of engagement, the rules of petitioning, you know, we are collecting these certain petitions now. If they want, if the peers override the rule of law, override the rights, but the ironic thing is they're using the rights, because they're using the rights themselves in their cause. So who's going to get them a pen? You know, you know, if you want to say everyone just, you know, goes on strike, this is like with the miners' strike. They just, you know, you can't get coal because they're on strike. You know, what happens when all the pen companies go on strike and there's no pens and the police haven't got a pen, right? Or the mobile phone company goes on strike, or Microsoft shuts down, you know, and none of the computers work, or they don't update them. What are the police going to do then? I'd say to the police chief, he doesn't really understand the situation that he's in, because this is really what's happening with all these mobile phones. They're moving the buttons around. They're annoying. Someone hacked me the other day. You know, I don't know who or how, but they were messing around with disk drives, so I couldn't delete anything, and I couldn't remove the write protection on it. And then I got another one. I took the stuff off it, and then it wouldn't open. It wouldn't open. I had to format it, but I managed to get the stuff off it. All my music's being messed with. So we've got a situation where everyone's just dicking with each other now. Everyone's dicking with each other, but have they got an official campaign, an official cause, and have they declared what cause it is? This is the thing, you know. When you're going about your cause and you're saying what it is, that's all right. But when you've got these, terrorism is when people are, you know, leaving briefcases on the motorway and scaring people, terrorising people, but they don't actually, they're not going about legal due process. They're not trying to get it put through Parliament. They're not asking people to support it. They're not claiming immunity. You know, they haven't got evidence in a case for judgment in Parliament. They're just, you know, if you just, you know, go and you know, run around the village terrorising people, and you're not actually, you haven't got a, well, maybe you just want to scare people, want them to be scared, you know, but what are you asking for? Oh, you know, you know, what case are you bringing to the council? What case are you bringing to the government? You know, I want everyone to be scared. You know, here is a signature by, you know, whatever it is, you know, like the Peaky Blinders. We want everyone to be scared. And we want to make a new law that we can scare everyone, you know, terrorise them and it not be illegal. You know, maybe abolish the harassment laws and so forth. I mean, you know, or whatever. You know, I mean, to be honest, I'm getting harassed. I'm getting harassed by the mobile phone companies, that they're dicking with the apps and the phones, and these adverts they're putting are real harassing me. That's harassment, but they're saying that I've accepted and consented to it. I mean, and this is what the Met Police Chief doesn't really understand, how much these forced adverts are upsetting everyone. And the thing is, they're using blackmail. They're saying, if you don't pay, you're going to have to be harassed, right? Or you can pay up. Now, if you had a company, this is what the whole Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg cage fight conundrum they had recently. You know, like a House of Horrors, you know, if you pay to come into the House of Horrors, you know, but the thing is, you pay to go into the House of Horrors if it's free, but if you choose to go in there, they've got to have a sign or notice outside of it, you know. You have a house of horrors. Booby traps are illegal, aren't they? You don't have a house of horrors. With loads of harassment in it. If you set up a building that harasses people when you walk round it, and you didn't notify people or get their consent, that's the thing. But you don't set up a freaky, scary building, and then when people just, wander into it and then start harassing them and say, oh, if you give me £10, I'll stop harassing you. What if you extend that to the neighbourhood? This is what the mobile phone companies and YouTube are doing a lot of harassments with this AI now. It's really scary and weird and freaky. I don't like it. But no one's stopping them from even building or designing it. The government hasn't even got any legislation or laws on what they're allowed to make with AI or not allowed to make. It even scared themselves with it. They even set AI up to have these conversations, and it started going into gibberish, and the people who set the experiment got freaked out and shut it down. So this is the position that Elon Musk is in at the moment. But the thing is, we're not being given any votes on all of this. All the votes you get is Labour or Tory, Labour or Tory. Starmer's not saying, I'm going to stop all this AI. I'm going to put a stop to all these forced ads. I'm going to put a stop to all these powerhouses that, 100 people object to them, but 5 people are more powerful. The powerful 5, over, the will of the few breaks the will of the many. This is how Starmer believes the country should be run. And Sunak, this is it, so something's got to happen, but in law, with Gail Bradbrook, the thing is, it's not just the jury or the peers supporting what she's doing and consenting and signing to it and supporting it and saying the Department of Transport window's replaceable, it's not antique, and, it's that she's doing community service because all the community have signed it to say that they support it. The thing is that there was a legal argument, there was a legal basis for that window breaking, and that is an advertisement that it's a theatrical performance to promote Extinction Rebellion. It's theatrics, I mean, there's a line in 007, I think it's Casino Royale at the start, the black and white scene, when if you think the theatrics will scare me, this is it. The representation, if Gail Bradbrooks is like a representation, a promotional representation, sacrificing a window. I mean, they do sacrifices in religious ceremonies, you're sacrificing a cow when we eat meat because it's legal. It's legal to kill a cow. You're sacrificing the cow because it's in law for food to eat. If you're sacrificing the window, sacrificial, of the window for an advertisement, for the environment or whatever, it gets the Met Police Chief kind of thinks that all this environmental stuff's quite wokish. But when you get onto the World Health Organization threatening to take away the very rights that we're claiming to use and overriding them, you've got a very serious case then. A very, very serious case, and shows that legal proceedings and process is a lot more important than, chasing a guy who's stolen a car. Because potentially this World Health Organisation attempts to lock us all down in our houses and have us all on motion detectors and stuff, which and not even go out with you using rights to collect signatures. And then if they lock down the apps and the social groups and forums and say you can't say this or that, you can't even collect signatures online, so you wouldn't even be able to bring a case. So I would suggest to the Met Police Chief that he needs to find a new strategy of enforcement. Once he started to accumulate, he's got other forces are forming. This is the thing, they might not be equipped, they might not have truncheons, they might not have facial recognition. What the Home Office, the Secretary of State for the Home Office, is wanting facial recognition. But what happens if all the people going after ULEZ vans are kids, and they're all 6-year-old? and not old enough to be prosecuted, what's the point in having facial recognition when, okay, we've got the identity of all these children, but none of them have got passports yet. None of them are old enough to be prosecuted or put to trial, even with, ASBOs or whatever. What if they're not old enough to have ASBOs? What's he going to do with that facial recognition? This is like the Penge song. The new welcome to Penge, gather little children, gather around me, welcome to Penge. It's like, welcome, it's like to the Met Police Chief, Mark Rowley, welcome to Penge, welcome to the Henge. Come gather round, police officers. Gather around the force. May the force be with you. Welcome the Roman army. Welcome the new Roman army to Penge. Welcome the new model army to Penge. This is it. Now, there are laws on standing armies, but the police force aren't meant to be an army because it's the police. The police aren't officially the army. Now, if they're starting to be used as an army, I think that, the Home Office, Secretary of State for the Home Office, should tell us if he's recruiting the police to use as the armed forces. Well, they've got some police are armed. Are the police an army or not? Is it a standing army? This is the thing. Now, if it's illegal for us to form a standing army, but we can gather peaceably. But what happens once, you've got 3 million people with referendum power overriding, the ministers? And what if they're saying, well, we want to be able to have a standing? What happens if tomorrow someone petitions Parliament to, make standing armies legal? And, they get 3 million people signing it out of 60 million, and they can have a referendum on it. Is the cop enterprise an army now? Is it a sitting army? Never mind a standing army. Are they using force? Are they using the force of Facebook? Are they using the pushing the algorithms down? Are they using the force of YouTube? Because if Charles owns those companies, and if BlackRock Vanguard own those companies, and if they're forcing us, our petitions to force them off YouTube or force them out of the newspapers, and we can't bring a legal case, then they're breaking the law as much as they're claiming Gail Bradbrook's breaking the law, smashing a window. Because this is a thing with YouTube. YouTube have taken my channel down, and they won't let me publish my petition videos. I'm not a standing army, I'm not smashing a window, I'm asking people to sign, I'm giving evidence. They won't even put that up. So YouTube, Neil Mohan and Paul Groves are breaking the law currently, and so are Twitter if they're forcing the algorithm down, because they're manipulating the press. It's almost like giving out 20 newspapers with something missing, and only 50 of the newspapers have got it in there. Did my thing really get published in the newspaper? I don't know. Did they send me a dummy newspaper and just print one copy off it? How do you even know that everyone in London got a hold of the newspaper? Although there's a certain publishing agreement and so forth, But you'd have to check. This is the thing with YouTube. If you paid for a newspaper advert, or even if it was a free advert, but they agreed to publish it, and they didn't, they just sent you a copy and said they'd done it, but they hadn't. That's effectively what YouTube and Twitter are doing now, which is kind of criminal and illegal. Well, it is. And it's breaking the law as much as Gail Bradbrook breaking a window, because they are required under the law as a publisher to publish political things, because it's legal, it's due lawful process. It's a lawful process. It's not just a formal process like it says on the local petition sites. It is a legal proceedings. There's a required publishing. So is Mark investigating? The thing with Mark Rowley is this. He hasn't taken one legal action against Facebook or YouTube for denial of the right of the press, the freedom of the press. And we've got that in England because it's Class F and there's a legal requirement for it to be shared and published, right? It has to be. And if that's denied, they're breaking the law. So why aren't the CPS and the police prosecuting any of these big corporate entities? Because Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak are telling them not to. And they've got the joystick, the reins on the police chief. So we're being, and I think that if all these corporate entities, you see, when people start to gather around in London and people are forming, now they're starting to get arrested just for having certain banners or certain signs or whatever, or not gathering peaceably. They're starting to gather. It's the right of the people to gather peaceably. But if the people are gathered with truncheons or rolling pins, then the police would say, well, we've got reason to believe they're going to use those rolling pins as a weapon and smash windows. And we believe that they've formed a standing army and that's illegal. So now we're going to call the army in to arrest them, right? But what Mark Rowley's not doing and what he blatantly refuses to do is say, right, so has Charles got... the British Army is the British Army and the police is the police. But is Charles raising a force? Has Charles got loads of guys in shirts and suits and sweaty white shirts in Facebook and YouTube, groomed and trained? And are they using a force to stop us lawfully petitioning? Are they pushing the algorithms down? Have they got, a sitting army instead? And what is the army? If the army's using truncheons and guns and M16s and handcuffs and weapons, that's armed. A computer's an armed force. So once you get, if Google have got 5,000 computers and Facebook have got 5,000 computers and they're using that as a standing army, a sitting army, in the same way that 77th Brigade and Battalion was, and they're forcing down the algorithm on lawful petitioning and legal cases, like what Parliament were directing 77th Brigade and Battalion, then they're actually using the army against the British people. And that is... But what they were doing was the Americans were doing it against the English citizens and the British Army were doing it against the Americans, and they had a good old cross-up, a good old Biden, a good old mash-up. So, but what Big Brother Watch was saying, Big Brother Watch were saying that, Big Brother Watch was saying that, a soldier gave evidence that some British people stuff were taken down. But what Parliament Petitions Committee are doing, they're not even actually, they're in charge. They're meant to enforce our political rights. Even if we're not running it on the government website, even if we're running it on 38 Degrees or Change.org, they're meant to enforce our political rights, or your MP's meant to enforce your political rights, because he's your elected representative for your petitioning. And if he isn't telephoning YouTube and telling them to put your videos back up, then who is? Now, what happened is the government reckon they made up a load of law that certain things they can force to be taken down, like, COVID misinformation or whatever. But not when it's evidence in a political case, because when you're bringing evidence in a case, it can be judged on purely, let's go back to that, judged by your peers, regardless of the elected MPs and the elected councillors and the rule of law. If you get so many people signing it that they agree with it, they're overriding the rule of law, and purely we don't want it, or we do want it. So when you've got 3 million people signing that we do want it or we don't want it for a referendum, and they've got the right to look at the evidence to sign it, the MPs can't possibly stop them from seeing it, because you're bringing the case to the public, which can get, and remember the Tumultuous Act said, if it's over 20 signatures, grand jury or the justices, but under it. But the thing is, so when you're collecting these petitions, and that act was abolished, you've got the right to bring the legal case to the public to show them the evidence that you're presenting and obtain their support and statements all the way up to 3,000 signatures without it being vetted by Parliament. Parliament can't refuse to publish it, and they can't tell the platforms to take it down, but the platforms themselves can't take it down because it's legal proceedings and that's protected, and it's got the right for publication through whatever means, in by whatever form. So the police at the moment, until Mark Rowley goes into, and you see he won't arrest Mark Zuckerberg because he's got Nick Clegg sat next to him, who is a knight of the realm. And these knights are military warriors, like, you know, the police chief. Some of the knights, police chiefs are knights. So, unfortunately, the ministers are using the armed forces and the police and the knights of the realm themselves. Starmer and Sir Nick Clegg is guiding Zuckerberg. Now, he's using the army against his own country with our political rights. So, Clegg is committing treason so far. From what I've had a few petitions removed from Facebook, and they got removed unlawfully. So that's treason, and Clegg is guiding Zuckerberg on that. So for that, that Scotland, I did a petition for Perth in the building a bridge, Highways Scotland building a bridge in Perth, Broxy Kennels, through a ancient site to stop it. And I was trying to get a local referendum in Perth with that petition, and it got removed from Facebook by the robot machine, you know, and that's illegal. You know, and you know, I tried to write to Clegg, but he didn't reply, didn't do anything about it. And the police aren't, that's a crime. You know, the police aren't doing anything about it. They're not going to prosecute Clegg. You know, they want to prosecute politicians if they've got drugs on them or walking around with drugs, but not when they're undermining our rights and legal due process. It would almost be kind of like, you know, your MP in their surgery refused to see you, or, you know, if they kind of sort of like, you know, just went on holiday like Matt Hancock and didn't turn up and just, you know, locked the MP surgery. They've been elected and they just weren't available, or went on permanent holiday, or something like that, or that's the kind of the equivalent, really. I think this BlackRock Vanguard has got a standing army, and I think that it's the model of the Starship Enterprise. And how I see it now with what they're doing, refusing to publish this, refusing to publish that, messing around with the controls on the websites, on Star Trek, you know, when they steal the Enterprise, the stealing of the Enterprise, you know, and what they've done is they're hijacking everything that you need for you know, like buying paper and pens in order to write a petition. You know, if the police aren't being targeted at the moment, if this corporate entity suddenly did target the police, you know, because the police are kind of helping them at the moment, you know, Mark Rowley needs to understand, right? Where's he getting his boots from? Where's he getting his pens from? Where's he getting his tie from? Where's he getting those things from on either his left and right shoulder? They're coming from somewhere. If, you know, if BlackRock Vanguard suddenly, you know, gave an order to all their companies out, don't sell the police any pens, don't provide them with any shoes, right? And Mark Rowley, you know, he turned up and they were all naked, and they're at the police station, and, you know, they've got no clothes on. They're all naked, like in police academy. And, you know, they need to write a statement down, and the mobile phone company, what if Charles BlackRock Vanguard gave us the executive order, you know, shut down all those police's phones, right? And then what would Mark Rowley do if no shop owner would sell him a pen? You know, there's a model for this. There's a movie for this, and the movie for it is like on, is it that Michael Caine? What's that film? Is it Michael Caine? I can't remember. Oh, I forgot it, and I knew that film. You know, that film when they go to those islands and there's a police officer, and they lure him there by saying that, you know, there's a girl gone missing. There's a girl, and it's really weird, and they're doing all these weird Gaelic festivals, and it makes the Gaelic people look sinister and not trustworthy, and their weird sacrificial rituals and all that. And he's looking for this girl and witnessing, and they're trying to I wish I could remember what film it is. It's a really, really well-known film. I think it's meant to be in one of the top films. And the police chief, not the police chief, this police officer goes, I think it's like they're meant to be something like the Isle of Man or something like that, set in this weird Gaelic island, or one of the Isles of Scilly or something like that. And he goes, I think they end up burning him. Oh, The Wicker Man, it's The Wicker Man. It's actually the film The Wicker Man, Because actually I've seen the Stop Cop City people built a little wicker model. I don't know if they're as aware of that film, though. I don't really know if they're as aware of the Wicker Man film. Yeah, it's The Wicker Man. I think it might be Michael Caine. And they end up burning him, don't they, in that wicker thing. They end up burning him in the wicker thing. So, this is kind of like what the Penge kind of like, this Penge song is kind of invoking a little bit like The Wicker Man. I've only just realised that it's been out. If it's 6 months ago, this is one of the new Public Image Limited songs. Welcome to Penge, come little children, gather around me. So, and they've been tricking the police chief all along, apparently, in that Wicker Man film. But it makes them look out to be bad. I guess there's some kind of connotations of the Roman army in that, but they weren't it was opposite way around. The Roman army apparently came over and, killed all the Druids. So there is some. But like in that Wicker Man film, if it wasn't like the Isles of Scilly or the Isle of Man, and if it wasn't one lone police officer trying to find a missing girl, like basically Madeleine McCann, that Madeleine McCann thing is effectively like the Wicker Man, isn't it? That they're pulling the police's todger on that, trying to get him to find that girl. That's literally like the Wicker Man, isn't it? Trying to giving the police an MOT. Well, I would say to the police chief, right, at the moment, the government are on his side. That, all these corporate entities are on the police chief's side. But what would the police chief do legally if he started going out to the shops, and what happens if the postman didn't deliver the next pens, they didn't turn up in the post? What happens if, suddenly, the postman wasn't turning up and the letters weren't arriving at the police station? What would the police chief do if, suddenly, when he went to buy his lunch, his officer started being sick and puking, and then they'd be straight round to the sandwich shop, with the forensics trying to find out, if what they put in the food, if they put something in his curry, to make him have the shits or something. What would the police chief do if, they wouldn't sell him lunch? If they said, I'm not serving you, mate, like in this pub, like in pubs, I'm not serving you, you're bad. What happens would the police chief say if all, everyone in London started saying, we're not selling you a sandwich, you're bad? What would the police chief do? Where's he going to get his pens from? Is he going to arrest the people for not selling him a pen? Is he going to, what is the police chief going to do if, not only don't sell him pens, this is the thing. I mean, what we're looking at with all this mobile phones, things are being done to us or withheld from us that we don't like, or that they're charging us. What would the police chief do if someone was in a shop and, he sent his officer to buy a box of pens, and then when they said, they're £5, and then when the police officer went in, they said, well, to you, they're £20, mate, right? And you see, all uniforms, you claim for under costs, right? We, the taxpayer, meant to pay for it. But when he goes and gets his sandwich on a lunch, right, what happens if the person in the sandwich shop says that it's £100 to you, officer, that bacon sandwich? Is the police chief going to arrest that sandwich shop for extortion? That's extortion. It's too expensive. Or fraud. That's not the real price. There's evidence that it's selling it to someone else. I can set my price as what I want. This is it. You don't have to have a standing army, an armed force. I mean, what happens if the country goes on strike and just refuses to turn up for work? What I think's happening with these mobile phone companies is that they're dicking with us. They're doing their own sort of protest, they're messing with the buttons on the mobile phone, but they're also charging us, all this, you can't have, you can't consent to harassment, because if YouTube could get you to consent to being harassed by their adverts, unless you pay up, then you can consent anyone to harassment in your own house. If every single person in England suddenly, what happens if everyone in England, right, suddenly now started doing a petition and saying, right, we're doing policy petition. Everyone in England now, if everyone in England, right, got a piece of paper and said, make harassment illegal, and then put the sign on the door saying, if you come into my house, you consent to being, whatever, what I want to do to you, then how can the police chief, prosecute someone for harassment or, grievous bodily harm or murder or nutting them or stealing their wallet if someone's got a thing on their door saying, if you come into my house, you will consent to my rules. I rule this roost. If you consent, come into my private house, consent, submit, accept, consent, submit, accept. Come into the parlour, said the spider to the fly. If every single household in England said that, then is a police chief going to say that, right, well, I can only prosecute people for murder on the streets. I can only prosecute people for harassment on the streets, right? No, those laws apply to the whole country. You can't just suddenly get people to consent, accept, submit, right? Surely, the police would say that it's some sort of, you're blackmailing them, that's, then you get your RICO charges out. But I don't want these adverts on my phone. I bought the phone and I paid for the contract and the apps come free, right? And he's getting me to consent, submit, accept to all these torturous behaviour, these weird behaviours, these weird treatments that I'm having, like shock treatment, not Rocky Horror, shock treatments. These treatments, I don't like these treatments they're putting me through. They're upsetting me and distressing me. And then the council are doing it. They put all these cycle lanes, and then they made everyone driving their vehicles, past us at, 4, 5, 6 in the morning making noise, it's been done, they're using these cycle lanes and making more noise, and then they're answering more in order to do more and more and more and more. Something needs to be done. But I've been on 1 hour and 26 minutes now, but I've covered I don't think you can cover anything else. It all comes down to legal arguments and technicalities. But what it comes down to, though, is these juries, in civil cases, apparently you can have, it's meant to have a jury. So, as far as I think what the police chief will say and claim when it comes to that situation that I just hypothesised is that he'll say that, well, no, you can't get people to consent and submit. It's not assisted suicide. There are certain laws around it. You can't. It's illegal. Booby traps are illegal. It's unlawful. You can't get someone consent to a booby trap. So, there are certain things that you can't get people to consent, submit and accept. And one of those things is the publication of the petition by legal proceedings, because you're going by the lawful due process. It's by lawful right and judgment. And that is what it says in the petition of right, by lawful rightful judgment, which means that you can do the case, you can investigate the crime. You've got the lawful right of investigation and publication for the petition case, because you need the signatures. And we're not being given that by YouTube and Facebook at the moment. They're not even by 38 Degrees website is even also, ironically, cheating the process, So that's it. And now, don't know if you can hear that, now we've got the JCB beeps. Whether or not if it is the real JCB beeping or some noise coming from somewhere else, because I've had it going in the middle of the night and there wasn't even anyone on the building site. I don't know where it was coming from. So, and I had to shout the other day, I had to shout to be quiet. What is the time now? it is 7. Oh, it's 8 o'clock. So they're not supposed to do it before 7:30. So those are annoying. Those JCBs are annoying. They're upsetting my ears. But they've got immunity. They've made it so the council can't stop them as long as it's not over a certain volume. But it's the type of noise, the character and nature of the noise is harassing. Now, that JCB isn't bringing a case to the government. That JCB, yes, they've had planning permission passed, but what if I'm bringing a case that I don't like it? It's upsetting and harassing me. They've got, they've been given immunity because the planning permission's passed. But, apparently, they don't even need the planning permission because, apparently, if it's something that didn't need planning permission, then they can make that noise. The tone and pitch of the noise is annoying. What can I do about it? It's travelling great distances. It's a certain pitch and tone. I think it is louder, actually, than what's permitted. Or they've devised a certain pitch and tone which is really penetrating. I've complained to JCB. Same with McDonald's. It goes through the walls in the house and so forth. It's been strategically planned. The whistle, a certain pitch. I think they've used devices to find out, it's like experiments on rodents, There's a lot covered in this scope on this video. To be honest, in 1 minute and if 1 hour, 1 minute, 1 hour, an hour and a half, in 1 hour 30 minutes, right? I think I've covered pretty much everything that you can need to get into for the whole process, which you need to take into consideration, and what it all comes down to, apparently, is lawful judgment. But, I am bringing a lawful, but the thing is, you have got certain other rights, like on the medical rights invoke certain laws and rights. But then again, if it's Gail Bradbrook, if you get so many signatures, right? The thing is, when you object to the building, you're meant to be objecting to it even being allowed. So if you're only building houses for 5 people and you get 100 people signing they don't want them, on the merit that they don't want them, and they can have that by, judgment of the peers, not by rule of law, just they don't want them, and there's a lot of them who don't want them, right? You're not supposed to have the plan in the building, so it wasn't supposed to have been passed. So when it comes to them actually, starting the building work and it annoying you, when actually even the noise is annoying you, well, if you get signatures from the public and to petition to shut that noise up or to get the council to stop it or something, it's by lawful process because you're setting out a legal case and you're getting the people to sign it, you're asking your peers to support it, and you're putting it to the council or the police to do something about the noise or whatever, even JCB, because every company has got a certificate of incorporation and a limited company, and his company's house company, and he's governed by the government anyway. So whether or not you get the government to make them change the noise, or whether you get the company themselves to do something about it, you can petition companies, I think, under Companies House because they've got the emblem of the crown, so it's Companies House. You're petitioning branches of Companies House when you're petitioning individual companies, really, when you're collecting signatures from the public. It's almost like a civil case, because a civil case is by case to the government against another party, entity, through civil action. So your civil action, by your case, people signing it, you can have juries in civil cases between companies. So you can even really, have you got protection from being prosecuted for, disconnecting the noise on the JCB when it's harassing and annoying you if you go about collecting petition signatures in the lawful way, So that's where I am with the whole thing. But the issue is if anyone's not following due and legal process or trying to deceive someone, and the council are deceiving people with the illegal bus lanes, the MPs are lying about due process and procedure in their policies on the website, trying to undermine the processes. So, there's a lot that a lot of people need to be aware of and understand what's currently happening at the moment. What's currently happening at the moment is a big corporate, all of these corporate entities have been purchased and bought, and then all the staff are being trained into one big standing army affiliation. And you say, well, it's not an armed force. Well, they're using computers, and our army has computers at their disposal. The police have computers at their disposal. They don't all have to be under the corporate entity control and pick up a rolling pin, and say, oh, now you're an army. And the police need to recognise that these corporate entities are now being trained and groomed, and they're all under one unified business entity, and it is an armed force against the public. And it's denying the public, it's making the public accept harassing behaviour, consenting, submitting. It's forcing them to be harassed by noises and sounds and adverts and talking buses and adverts that are harassing people. And it's also refusing to publish their legal cases so they can oppose it because they think it'll be harmful to the company. Well, bringing a civil suit against the company is harmful to it. If you take McDonald's to court, it could be potentially harmful, but you've got the right to bring them to court. But it's almost like McDonald's and these big companies taking the government to court because they're harming potential future profits, because it's harmful to the company. What these companies effectively are trying to do is they're trying to say that you can't take civil action against them. Well, we've been priced out of civil action. None of us can afford civil action because all of the lawyers are like £1,000 to £5,000 at a time. So we can't take civil action because we can't afford it. Now, if you actually just make your own legal action against these companies and write to them, they normally just refuse to reply and they normally just ignore you unless you actually file the case yourself. And then you're worried whether you're going to lose or not and how much it's going to cost. Like going to the small claims court online. How can you get there if you can't drive? If it's in Northampton, no one can get there. How much is it going to cost to drive there now? And if the corporate entity that you're suing's got billions of pounds, they can just pay their lawyer to turn up in Northampton. So we're being tackled and undermined by the whole thing. I think that the refusal of the corporate entities to allow you to publish on their websites, on their YouTube channel, on their Facebook, on their Twitter, and they are dunking the algorithms down, what it's doing is they're obstructing your legal action. And they're obstructing it with their business because you kind of needed their business to do your legal action because they have the monopoly on the newspaper publishing, on the sharing of petitions and publishing of petitions. They have the monopoly on it. And the pen company has the monopoly on the pens, or else you can't write the signatures down. So if they suddenly refuse to sell you the pens for petitioning, it's like them refusing the pens to sell the police to bring the legal case, and then the police officer will say, well, that's perverting the course of justice. So And because petition is a legal action, it's due legal process. What actually YouTube and Facebook are doing is they're perverting the course of justice by taking channels down and dunking the algorithms. And if the MPs are directing them to do that, the MPs are... That's treason. That is treason because MPs are meant to tell them to put our petitions up, put them up, not to take them down. Because you've always got the right that they can get so much support that it even overrides the judgment of the judges or the ministers because it goes to referendum. And if they're obstructing you from getting enough to get a referendum, then they're perverting the course of justice because the course of justice means due legal process, not just criminal action. It's due legal process. They're perverting the course of due legal process. So I'm saying now, I think I might send this to my MP. And I think you might have to listen to all of it because the 5 minutes is only if you turn up in surgery. It's not if, you sort of book in the 5 minutes in surgery. I mean, Davidson MP had his YouTube channel taken down and someone emailed him and it got put straight back up again. If my MP, which is Mark Eastwood, if he or the Parliament Petitions Committee don't get Parliament to, or themselves, get YouTube to put my petitions back up on my channel. That's treason. And the thing is that it is protected, and there is legislation for this in place under Class F, sharing it through any means and in whatever form. And the thing is, we have elected these MPs and councillors to represent us, and we're paying for them out of his tax money. But even Rand Paul was getting stuff taken down. So that's kind of like, that's kind of Biden and the president trying to mess around with his senators. And this is what Parliament are doing. They're trying to misdirect their MPs, and they're trying to lie to even their MPs of parties about stuff. And that's almost like, the council at Shropshire and Wiltshire publishing those guidance and guidelines to the public saying, oh yeah, petition is a formal request. No, it's not a formal request. It's due process. It's due legal proceedings, judicial legal proceedings, which in all, history of England is the same as criminal or civil proceedings. So, we need our channels put back up. Not only that, my 38 Degrees petitions, 3 of them have been taken down, and that website is a publisher and facilitator, and if it doesn't want to publish petitions and share them, it shouldn't have a website. It doesn't have a legal right to intervene in other people's legal cases because they're legal proceedings, and that's perverting the course of justice. It shouldn't have started a petition site if it didn't want to publish and share petitions, And if there's any spoiled signatures or anything done wrong, they're set aside and they aren't counted, and all evidence is judged when you hand it in. 38 Degrees, that's another thing. These are all separate matters. There's a 38 Degrees issue, and then there's the YouTube issue, which are the main 2 issues at the moment. But then there's all the tax as well. Political materials aren't meant to be taxed. You're not meant to be taxed on them. All the banners and flyers and logos and printing and stuff like that. So there's a lot of tax to claim back and things like that and stuff. There's a lot of issues at the moment, and it's all because we're trying to oppose what's been done to us, by the government and by these companies who are wanting to get changed. Then they're trying to take these rights away. They're not even upholding these rights while we've got them. And that's the thing. We're trying to get these rights upheld and enforced while we've got them, and all the while they're trying to take them away when we aren't even getting them enforced while we've got them, So there are a lot of issues at the moment. I'd really like to submit this to I'd really like to attach this to that Darwin Oak petition, because, that ties in with all the roads and highways, the roads and highways, going through trees and things like that. And I think they'll probably get that tree protected because they've got a hell of a lot of signatures. But I'm talking about people who are finding it difficult to get signatures, or there's some mysterious force maybe undermining it or dipping the algorithm or even taking your channel down. No wonder you can't get the signatures, Or if it's hard to find people who support it, but there are people who support it, but you need to go out there and get them. These tools, these, mobile phones and websites are meant to be helping you find the right people to sign them and so forth. So, I've covered quite a lot there.